Um, so our lecture name is a deep dive into WannaCry and a shallower one into Petya. This presentation was done after the latest WannaCry events, although now it's not the absolute latest, because yesterday we all witnessed the Petya thing that spread throughout the world and caused a lot of panic. So we didn't have time to do a presentation on that, but I think both cases are pretty similar. Maya will talk about this later. So the thing about the WannaCry ransomware is that once this thing happened, I think it created a lot of panic throughout the world. Everybody's seen businesses going down, and it was everywhere. You see a simple WannaCry Google search just a day after this happened yields something like 11 million results. This is like the Twitter statistics on the hashtag WannaCry, and it was all over the place. The New York Times, NBC, everybody knows that Microsoft had something to do with it, like a patch or something. Everybody knows that the NSA was somehow involved in this, and it was really all over the place. We've seen, these kind of pictures of the, ransomware infecting stuff all over the world, like this or like that. No, that's actually fake. It's fake news. But yeah, it was really all over the place. So I think that our mission in this presentation is to try and bring the facts here, tell you what is true, what isn't true, what actually happened in this thing, what did it contain, and that's it. Hopefully you will go out of this room after you understand completely what was this thing all about. So first of all, let's introduce ourselves. This is Maya Horowitz, and I'm Yaniv Balmas. She leads the intelligence group in Check Point, and I lead the research group in Check Point. And these are very nice pictures. And yeah, the best ones with like folk singers, Israeli folk singers. And Maya will continue here.
So let's show everything on a timeline so that we know what came before what. So it all started mid-March when Microsoft released their Patch Tuesday with patches against some vulnerabilities in Microsoft and specifically in SMB. And a month later, shadow brokers released the vulnerabilities and the exploits in SMB that they stole from the NSA. So this was the leak that everyone is talking about, and just released the NSA code over WikiLeaks, and it made it to GitHub so that anyone could potentially use it. But this was, again, a month after the Microsoft patch had already been out. So the smart users could have already been protected against these exploits. Now a month later, we all know what happened, the WannaCry attack. All these different organizations and many more were breached, and their files encrypted and held ransom. The day later, there was what they called the hero, the British researcher who was able to find that there's a domain in the code of the ransomware that if it was registered, then the entire attack would be stopped. He registered this domain actually before he even understood what he was doing, but this was the famous kill switch, meaning that the minute this domain was registered, the ransomware stopped from encrypting files and stopped from infecting additional machines and additional networks. The day later, there was a new domain a new kill switch, and a day later there was the third and the last. In this case, we were lucky enough or quick enough to find this one ourselves. One of the researchers in my group found this domain, registered it, and stopped the last part of this campaign. And when we registered this kill switch, it means that we started receiving all the requests coming from all the victims around the world, and we were able to draw this map of the infections of the third variant of this ransomware. And you can see here the infections globally, and I marked here just in Israel. We saw from the third and last variant 142 IP addresses in Israel which were infected, but you can see that most infections were in India, Russia, which is interesting, we'll get to that later, and in the US. You now.
My turn. Okay, so this is going to be a technical brief about what this thing actually is, what it contains, and what it can do. So this is the general overview of the WannaCry. It starts with a stage 1 dropper. This is the thing that when it starts, this is how this thing starts executing on your computer. There's a stage 1 dropper. What he's doing is basically just a few stuff. First of all, it scans your entire local LAN, okay, everything. And whoever has SMB port open, SMB is a TCP port 445, it just uses the exploit that we'll talk about just in a few minutes, and infects this computer. So this is the lateral movement within the local LAN. Next thing it does, it scans the internet, but scanning the internet is only on a class C network. So that's only 254 addresses being scanned on the internet, and whoever is found with SMB open to the internet, it does happen, obviously, gets also infected with this thing. So entire scan of local LAN, and then just a small scan of the internet for vulnerable SMB clients. And the last thing it does, this thing checks the kill switch. Actually, this is not in the right order. First, it checks the kill switch. So obviously, if the kill switch is there, it doesn't do the exploitation stuff after it. That's why the kill switch is so effective. But that's all the stage 1 loader does. Yes?
Why they put the kill switch in the first place? I mean, it's so much consideration for all the victims.
Yeah, so question was, why did they put the kill switch in the first place? And I would even make this a bigger question. Why did they even put a kill switch in there? I have no idea, but we'll talk about this later. It's like it's an open question. But anyway, it's there. I'm just describing the technical, I'm going through the assembly, and this is what I see. So I'm passing this to you. Next thing it does, it drops a stage 2. Now, actually, the stage 2 is actually the same as stage 1. It just drops itself, but it only starts executing from a different execution point, right? And at that point, it does some other stuff, which is to start the encryption thread itself. It goes through all the files and encrypts them. And then it unpacks a few embedded resources inside this binary, and those resources and executes them. And those resources are used for various stuff, like there's the UI, the thing that actually asks you to pay the money, is an actual application. This is actually something that we don't usually see in ransomware. Usually it's like a website or an HTML page, something like this. At this point, this malware, it's a completely different executable. And then it also has Tor, tor.exe. This is the actual Tor downloaded from the Tor site. A mini Tor, but it is Tor. And this is actually the reason why the original binary is huge. It's really big compared to other malware. Why it's there, I don't know. We'll go through speculations later, but it is there. And then there's 2 other modules, one for deleting temporary files and one for executing other resources, some technical stuff, but not really important process-wise. Now, that's the entire thing inside this binary. That's what it does. That's what it contains. If you heard anything else, it doesn't do anything else. That's everything in there. And now, another thing I want to go over with you is the way this thing does cryptography, the way this thing encrypts the files, okay? So in order to do that, we need to do a quick crypto lesson. So that's my crypto 0.101. In crypto, we have two main cryptographic algorithms. One is called symmetric encryption, right? That's where you have only one key. So you have one key for encryption, and the same key is also used for decryption. You encrypt it with the same key, you decrypt it with the same key. Second algorithm is asymmetric encryption. In asymmetric encryption, we have two keys. One key is used to encrypt, the other is used to decrypt. It can also be used vice versa, but that's it. Symmetric encryption, asymmetric encryption. And now that you are all bona fide crypto analysts, we can go on to talk about the actual encryption method. So we have the victim side and the attacker side. First thing that happens, that the attacker, before the malware is even spread, it generates two global RSA keys. Now RSA is asymmetric encryption, so you have two keys. We'll call it the global public and the global private. This thing is generated on the attacker's computer, or on the attacker's side. And then the global public key is embedded inside the malware, right? And then the malware is spread into the victim. Somehow, we'll talk about this later. But now the malware has arrived to the victim computer. What it does is generate another set of RSA keys. Again, asymmetric keys, so it's two keys. We'll call them local public and local private, right? Now what happens is that the malware starts enumerating the files on the file system. So it takes file by file, so this is file X, and for each file, it generates AES key. Now that's a single key, right? A symmetric encryption, and it uses that key to encrypt this file, right? Now the file is encrypted, and now actually all I need at this point to open the file is the AES key, right? But this key is now encrypted with the local public, and this all result is just appended to the end of the file, okay? So at that point, in order to open the file, all I actually need is the local private. If I take the local private, I can extract the AES key and then decrypt the file, right? But then the local private key is decrypted with the global public key, which came from here, right? And this whole thing is sent to the attacker's side. Now, this encryption algorithm is intact. It's good. It will work. There is no way to break it. Everything, we looked at it for a long time, and it's actually kind of perfect. I have no comments to say about that. It works. Now, as for the spreading method, how does this thing get to the victim computers? Well, that was also a big question, and to our feeling, there was a big confusion. Maybe now people start to understand a bit more. I don't know if you do or not, but all of these terms have, popped up all over the place. Twitter, Facebook, blogs, wherever you want. There's like Eternal Blue, CVE, something, SMB, Double Pulsar, MSF, 01710, and stuff like that. And what I want to do now, I'm not going to go over the internals of the vulnerability, although it's a very nice vulnerability. And if you want to hear some details, come catch me after the talk. But I'm just going to make some order out of all of these terms here. So let's start with SMB. If you're not familiar with it, SMB is a protocol that comes shipped with any Microsoft Windows version that ever existed, starting from the days of NT4 and perhaps even before that. And this is the thing that you use when you do, like, for example, I don't know, network shares. If you ever did / something, this goes over TCP port 445. That's SMB. Now, what is this shadow brokers thing everybody's talking about? So that's just an online group who at some point leaked tools that were attributed to be NSA tools, right? The specific SMB exploit was leaked within the shadow brokers leak. Nobody knows who these guys are, right? They're just like an internet group thing, anonymous stuff. Sorry. Technical issues. Good. So Eternal Blue. What is this Eternal Blue thing? Eternal Blue is the actual vulnerability that's been used in this attack, right? And this vulnerability has been leaked within the shadow brokers NSA leak, right? Now, just to explain this leak thing, if you are familiar with like other frameworks, like for example, Metasploit. So this thing is kind of the rough equivalent of the NSA's Metasploit thing. It's a big framework containing a lot of vulnerabilities in there and a lot of methods to attack, right? And this Eternal Blue was just one of them. Now, double pulsar, again, if you're familiar with the Metasploit reference, so this is kind of the rough equivalent of the Metasploit's interpreter, right? So after the machine has been exploited, now you need to put something in there, some kind of backdoor, some kind of payload that you put in there that will let you control this thing. This is double pulsar. It's used not only with this specific vulnerability, it's used with a lot of other vulnerabilities within this leaked framework, right? So that's double pulsar. And now CVE 2017-0144 and some other of them is just CVE. If you're not familiar with it, it's a MITRE like organization. The MITRE organization publishes this thing as vulnerability IDs. So this is the specific ID given to the vulnerability we've discussed before, right? And MS01710 is just the name of the patch that Microsoft did for these vulnerabilities. By the way, it's this vulnerability and some other as well. So that's all the terms, and I hope that makes some sense and puts things in place for those of you who didn't understand it exactly. So this is the fun time now, and it's speculation time. Let's talk about what is this thing, where did it come from, what's going on, and all the questions like the one that you've asked. So let's split it into a few global stuff. First thing is the technical level. First of all, I can tell you personally that this malware is not packed, it's not obfuscated, and quite frankly, it's not the best code I've ever seen. Actually, it's one of the worst I've ever seen. It's very poorly written, contains a lot of bugs, and you know, when you're doing reverse engineering or diving into a malware, you get to some kind of intimate level with the guy who wrote this, and a lot of time you're just asking yourself, what did you do here? I completely don't understand your logic, but it happened a lot along this research. So this is something we should consider. There were a lot of like unused dialogues inside this UI I showed you, like this one. It's never used within the malware, but still it's in there, it's in the code. It looks like something not completely cooked. I don't know how to explain it. And this is just something I found over my Twitter feed. I'm a random guy giving the WannaCry authors like comments on on the web GUI that needs some improvement, like margins or reduced font size, vertical align center. He's actually right. This thing is very poor GUI. And now regarding the SMB exploit. So as I mentioned before, this leak of the NSA tools was a framework. It's like a big binary or a big bunch of files. And in order to extract this specific vulnerability from this framework, it takes some work and it takes some technical level to do. It's not something that anyone with computer access and some knowledge can do. You actually need to understand a thing or two in order to do that. And the thing is that people did it after the NSA exploit. Not a lot, but there were some GitHub pages, some in Chinese, some in English, that contained actually exactly that. Somebody that ripped off the vulnerability from within the NSA exploit. And the thing is that this here is like just something I ripped off the GitHub page. As you see, there's a couple of placeholders in here. And this is the code from WannaCry. And as you can see, the placeholders are still there. So these are exactly the same placeholders. If you were wondering, this thing has nothing to do with the vulnerability itself. It's just placeholders like comments, call them comments, inside the code. So this can tell us that the guy who wrote WannaCry, he might have not understood anything about this vulnerability at all. He just took the code from GitHub, put it inside his half-cooked malware, and spread it around. Again, it's a speculation, but I guess it's a kind of a... What? Yeah. And answering your question about the kill switches, I think that even the existence of kill switches inside the ransomware doesn't make sense. I don't see why when I spread a ransomware, not that I do, but if I would spread a ransomware, I would try to make the most profit of it. Why should I put the kill switch in there? There is no business logical reason to do this. I can't see one at all. And let's say that he did put a kill switch in there for whatever reason he chose to, right? After the first anonymous how did they call him? Coincidental hero or something, found the first kill switch, right? So this guy who wrote the WannaCry malware now understands that there is a kill switch, and maybe he did a small mistake. So there were next versions. There were versions that were released after the kill switch was revealed, and they again contain kill switches. So again, it doesn't make sense. If I'm writing this malware and I understand that, okay, this kill switch makes my business not so good, so next version will be without the kill switch. It's just as easy as commenting one single code line, but he didn't do that. So why didn't he do that? I don't know. Again, something for you to think about.
Some of the other questions that are still open up until today is the infection vector. There was a lot of confusion around this. At first, people said that it started with phishing emails, probably just because there was another ransomware campaign just the day before this one that really did start with phishing campaign, and it was the Jeff ransomware for those who are familiar with it. But up until today, no one knows who patient 0 was and how was this network infected. But what we can say is that the minute that there was a first network, the way from there to a global epidemic was very, very short. Because as Yaniv said, what the malware does is not just spread inside a network, but also look for random other networks that it can spread to by just scanning a huge range of random IP addresses. Another question is behind the motivation for this attack, because obviously with ransomware, the main motivation usually would be to get money. But there was something very fishy about the monetization process or operation in this campaign. So this is the ransom letter, and there's a Bitcoin wallet to which the victim can transfer money. Yeah, if you are a victim, you want to pay, so you pay the money to this wallet, and then you click check payment, but then you get this error message saying that the payment was not confirmed, and you can call the threat actors here between 9 and 11 a.m. Monday to Friday. So that's a very bad operation here. And if you were here for Orly's presentation, you saw that usually the ransomware are proud of great customer service. Well, in this case, very poor service. And this is what can explain the fact that up until today, all the money paid in ransom to these actors is $130,000. And considering the fact that it was a huge attack, it doesn't really make sense. Another problem here was that that even if you called these people, you did your best, you couldn't really get the files, and because there's no way to say that you did pay the ransom. There were only 3 Bitcoin wallets to which victims can pay, and there was no unique ID per victim, so it means that the authors can't really relate the money to a specific victim and give them the decryption key. Now, they did give an option to do a POC, a proof of concept, that they can decrypt files, and this is what the decrypt button is for. They say here that you can decrypt some of your files for free. You click the decrypt button and you do get 10 files back. But from our analysis, it looks like these files aren't randomly chosen. They were in fact pre-chosen in the encryption process, meaning that they were encrypted in an entirely different method, and decrypting them is just a rip-off. Okay, doesn't mean anything about the option to actually decrypt all the other files on the victim's computer. Moving on to more speculations. So these are the countries infected by WannaCry, or the top countries. And the interesting thing here, as I said in the beginning of the presentation, is that Russia came third in the number of victims. Now, I don't know if you're aware, but the best way for you all to avoid ransomware targeting your computer, live in Russia. That's really the best immunity. And no ransomware ever hits Russia, but this one did, which makes one speculate if it came from Russia, because usually they blacklist their own country with their attacks, probably trying to avoid law enforcement, the local law enforcement, from chasing after the threat actors. So this is it regarding WannaCry, and you are supposed to be left with a few facts and with a few speculations, and I want to move on to the very last part and the very last slide, which is to try to compare between the WannaCry attack to the what I call PetyaCry, or the attack from earlier this week, because everyone was saying, hey, here's another WannaCry global attack. So let's get back to the facts. So the global spread with WannaCry was huge, and it was worldwide, while with Petya, it was mainly in the Ukraine. It started with the Ukraine. There were a few ricochet in other countries, but the very most of the victims were still in the Ukraine. It might be connected to the way the malware was spread, which is probably through software updates of an accounting software that about half of the government organizations in the Ukraine use. So this company is still denying that they are related or have been compromised to be part of this attack, but still this is the leading assumption right now. The Ukrainian police said that it is true. Microsoft are also saying that they have proof from their forensics, but I can't really say for sure. That's why I left the question mark here. But it does make sense considering the fact that most of the victims are in the Ukraine. With WannaCry, as I said, we still don't know how it started. Encryption is a bit different. Both are ransomware, both do encryption, but with WannaCry, encryption was file encryption, so encrypting each file separately in the process that Yaniv described. While with PetyaCry, the encryption is of the entire hard drive, meaning that the victim can't really approach, or rendering the hard drive useless entirely. Lateral movement with WannaCry was using the eternal blue vulnerability. With Petya, what they did is that they tried eternal blue, but they also added a different lateral movement mechanism. So maybe because the SMB was already patched for many companies, they also added a second option, which is to rip the credentials of users in the network and use them for the lateral movement in two different ways. And then spreading externally. Once there is an infection in a network, we said that with WannaCry, they also scanned other IP ranges, trying to get from one network to another. With Petya, they did not do that, and this is why it all stayed very limited, only to the first circle of victims. Lastly, money. So with WannaCry, I said that the sum of money that they have in their Bitcoin wallets up until today is a bit over $100,000 US. With Petya, 10,000. That's it. And so for me, when I see all these facts, I get a feeling that with Petya, it's something that is very, very targeted to the Ukraine. especially because of the infection method and the fact that they did not leverage the ability to also spread to the second circle of victims. But this is just my speculation, and the meaning or the goal of this presentation was to help you tell the speculations from the facts, so you can stay with these facts, and I leave it to your own best judgment to decide who is behind both these cyber campaigns. So thank you very much. That's it for us.